I would like to remind all the commissioners to please log in your volunteer hours and count me in Boulder. Scott, I don't know if you have received training in that yet. Takes 2 seconds, so I'm not sure how we do that. Is that Celia?
Yeah, I could connect you with Kate Kelsch, who works with the volunteer.
Okay.
And she can get you all set up with that.
Good point. I know I just jotted it down because I have forgotten to log in my hours with all the disruption. The next item for today, I think we have an addition to our agenda. Well, we have the approval of the agenda. So if there are any additions or amendments to the agenda at this point.
Oh yeah, and this is Celia. I just wanted to add the approval of February's meeting minutes, which is in the packet.
Yes, thank you. And we will do that after public comment?
Yeah, that's where it generally sits. So then.
All right, so we will squeeze that as like 3.5 after public comment. So I see we have a member of the public, and we have our public comment open now. I'll just go over the rules of speaking at the Library Commission. Public comment, you know, you're supposed to sign up 15 minutes before, but our format is quite different now. So, Alicia, were you interested in speaking at the meeting? Alicia Murray?
Sorry, I didn't know if I should type in a comment. I can type in a comment or I can voice it right now. Sure.
I think what David was alluding to is like after public comment is closed, you're there as an observer. Correct, David? Is that your intent?
Yeah, she can speak to the commission, and then, you know, in the rest, you're conducting your business. If you were to call or on anyone, they could be required to speak. That's entirely up to you.
Yeah, so our rules, which are posted on our website, an individual speaker has 3 minutes, and the chair can lengthen or shorter the time as allotted. You know, when we have lots and lots of speakers, we have 45 to 60 minutes of input, but each speaker is limited to 3 minutes. Public comment is not meant as a dialogue. We're here to listen to your concerns. Sometimes when it's appropriate, there might be response from staff or from the commission.
Okay.
All right.
Oh, so I shall speak. Okay. Well, first of all, I apologize if this is not, you know, how things are done, but I think I had emailed you, Juana, and it was basically, I'm just interested in understanding, you know, what percentage of employees were furloughed, what the remaining employees have been doing, what the possibility for a you know, what the library looks like in a COVID world in terms of providing additional services than just remote services. And given the, you know, great decrease in revenue, what that means for the next, you know, couple months to the end of the year with the budget.
All right, thank you. And some of that might be part of our discussion later in the agenda. You know, some of it is well, most of your questions are David's purview. And I think he has discretion on how much of that is public. I think a lot of human resources issues are not public. So, David, I'll leave it up to you later in your director's report to address whichever of those points are appropriate.
Thanks, Juan. I think I can hit on almost all of them. The last part I didn't quite catch. What the impact of the budget reductions, was that the question, Alicia?
Indeed. What is the impact of the budget reductions on the library's operations in the next couple of months through? I'm guessing, I don't actually know if Boulder works on a fiscal year, on a calendar year, or like a September to September year, or something different. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Alicia. And I think that is the end of our public comment, correct? We don't have any other members of the public in the meeting.
I did have one more comment. I wanted to say I saw an article in the Daily Camera about building, sorry, I always mix this up. Is it building 61 or building 31? Anyway, that I love to see that I knew that people were making masks, and I think that's fantastic. I also think that's fantastic publicity for the library and only engenders good and warm feelings. I used to be in PR and marketing, so I always love to see that when I, when the library sells itself. I don't know if that was an intentional thing or if the Daily Camera came to you, but anyway, anything we can do regarding that is fantastic. So that was great.
All right, thank you. So next on our agenda, we have approval of the minutes from our last meeting, which was sometime in a different lifetime. Seems like a long time ago, February 5th. We met at the main library, and you all received as part of your packets our meeting minutes. So any of those who were present at the time have anything to add or change? Otherwise, there's a motion on the table from Stephen to approve the minutes from February 5th. Any seconds?
I'll second it as Joel.
Joel seconds the motion. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? All right, so we approve the minutes from February. Thank you. And now to the exciting part of our evening. I'm going to issue the whatever the appropriate word is, the oath of office to our new commissioner. Scott, are you ready? Okay, Scott. Jennifer, do you have the ability to see Scott, or?
I don't see him. I see his little emblem at the bottom of the screen, but I don't see him.
It looks like his microphone is muted.
Okay.
I can see him in the participants, so he's in here.
Again, I thought I had unmuted myself.
Ah, there he is.
All the time.
There we go. I'm so used to using Zoom, I sometimes get a little confused. So let me try this again. Okay, here we go. State of Colorado, oath of office. I, Scott Steinbrecher, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States of America and of the State of Colorado and the Charter and ordinances of the City of Boulder, and faithfully perform the duties of the office of a member of the Library Commission, which I am about to enter. Signed, Scott Steinbrecher, May 6th, 2020.
Very good. Welcome to the
Yay.
commission.
Did I do it right that time?
You did.
Okay.
All right. So now we have a full commission again. And next we have do we have the, yeah, we have the election. But before that, Scott, is there anything else you wanted to tell us about yourself? I think you did your few minutes of presentation earlier and we cut you off to start the meeting. I don't know if there's anything you would like to add. Well, we will spend many, many hours together, so we will get to know you. All right. And now we are going to elect our new officers for the coming year. Do we have two positions? I think we have two positions. We have commission chair and commission vice chair. And we start by electing the commission chair. Yes.
I nominate Juana Gomez for the commission chair.
Thank you, Joel. There's a nomination on the floor. Are there other nominations? And people can self-nominate. And you can campaign for yourselves too. All right, hearing no further nominations and Stephen seconding the nomination. This part is awkward, right? Do I hear votes in favor? Anybody opposed? Do we have opposition when we are voting on somebody, or do we have? Okay. So I think that means I'm chair. All right, thank you. I will do my best to serve in this easy time. It'll be a piece of cake. Ha. All right, nominations for vice chair. I have a nomination. I would like to nominate Joel Koenig for vice chair. Are there other nominations? So Stephen seconded the nomination of Joel as vice chair. And hearing no other nominations, all those in favor of voting Joel to the position of vice chair? Aye. Anybody opposed? Jennifer, you can see everybody, so I don't know if you can. Was that a unanimous? I think we voted him unanimously.
I only can see 4 people, Juana.
Okay.
It's the last 4 people that have spoken, so
All right.
the others, I don't see their pictures.
So a little bit different than Zoom. Very good. So I think we just voted Joel into the position of vice chair. Yay.
Thank you.
Congratulations. And that concludes the business part of our meeting, which was very fast today. Some information updates.
But Juana, we need to talk about the Library Foundation members too.
Oh, you're absolutely right. Yes, thank you. So every year we have 2 commissioners serving on the Boulder Library Foundation board. We have had Joel and Jane serving this past year. Maybe 2 parallel questions. Joel and Jane, are you interested in continuing? And/or are there others interested in serving?
This is Joel. I'm interested in continuing.
So both Joel and Jane are interested in continuing, and at this time, Stephen is not. So Joel and Jane, thank you for serving for another year. You have done a great job and so far, and we look forward to more reports from you in the next 12 months. All right, that concludes the business portion of our meeting. Now we're going to hear an update about the ATB request. And is that David will update us?
Well, you have it in writing. Jennifer and I are more than happy to answer any questions that you might have, but it is there in front of you. If there's anything that you don't understand from the written update, please let us know. There were some minor changes.
Yeah, so to review.
Scott, I guess for your edification, typically monies that are not spent and or sometimes revenues that we earn through the course of the year, we have the opportunity to request those back as an adjustment to base. That usually occurs around May. So we had submitted a number of things for the adjustment to base prior to the COVID crisis occurring. And so now with the COVID crisis in full swing, some of those things were changed or rejected and or pulled back. So it was a negotiation. We talked about them and were able to rank all the priorities for what services would be critical or not. And so the written document that you have in front of you details that.
Yeah, and I had a few questions. I had I guess the impact of these withdrawn items. So obviously we wish we had public furniture repair and replacement and library maintenance. What will be the impact of not having those this year?
There's some small impacts. The furniture, this was the first year that we had actually, last year was the first year we had actually received funding for that budget. It went unspent partially because the facilities and asset management crew at the city we work with were consistently understaffed throughout the year and were unable to manage some of the contracts. So I don't know that it'll look dramatically different next year. The impact won't be felt. Typically, we have not maintained furniture well because we didn't have a budget for it. So part of that money was for cleaning. But we did, we are anticipating getting some of that funding in the future. So we will clean and replace furniture as necessary. In the event where we have completely destroyed and or filthy furniture, we don't leave it out on the floor. We take it out of circulation, and it, probably jumping ahead a little bit, with regard to response to the coronavirus, we are decreasing the amount of seating in the library and spreading a lot of stuff out, so there won't be many places to gather for once we reopen. So I'm not sure you'll see an immediate impact, Juana.
All right, thank you.
Juana, may I add something?
Yeah.
So that's money that wasn't spent from last year. We received an allocation this year, And last year we did spend most of the furniture money. We purchased new replacement furniture for Maine and Meadows. And our plan this year was and is, unless things change, to purchase replacement furniture for Reynolds. So that was just extra money, if you will, that we hadn't spent, that we were hoping to sock away in our savings for other projects. But we aren't able to do that this time.
Scott just typed in a question. Is the $500K for the North Boulder branch secure?
Yes.
Yeah, as far as it going forward with the adjustment to base, Scott. So the executive budget team for the city hasn't made a final decision as to whether the North Boulder branch will go forward. We anticipate a decision around that in the next 2 to 3 weeks, but I don't. So obviously, if they were to decide not to go forward with that project at this time, then that money would probably also draw back. But it comes from the library fund, so it would go back to the library fund.
Then the other two items that are postponed, the Inclusivity Campaign, could you refresh us what that would have looked like?
That was a marketing campaign. Some parts of it you did see roll out. There were several other phases. One was going to be a campaign that pictured diverse members of our community, and this campaign slogan was "You belong here." That one will not go forward. The other part of that money was for support for the full-blown One Book, One Boulder that we were going to be doing this spring, summer, and fall. That event may still happen in some ways, but we won't have same advertising money for it that we had planned for.
And then the feasibility study, we had a consultant or several consultants gave us proposals, and one had been selected hours before COVID. And so that is just postponed for now. Is that something where typically we would go back to the same consultant, or would we have to request qualifications all over again?
No, we won't have to request qualifications over again. You know, if we were to do this in 2021 or sooner, we could bring back the same consultant.
All right, thank you. So are there other questions from the group about the adjustments to budget? And this adjustment to budget, again, happens twice a year. This is our first. There'll be one in the fall.
Yes, that's correct, Juana.
All right, so seeing no further questions, our next agenda item is the reopening update, and from Jennifer and David.
Yeah, so again, it's all there in writing. The council did, in a press release went out this afternoon, that the library will reopen for carry-out service beginning May 18th. That period will last for several weeks, where your people are able to pick up holds that are currently on the shelf. Sometime after June 1, we'll start allowing for new holds, and so the people will be able to request books online and get them through a pickup service, carry-out service. And then soon after that, when we deem it safe, we'll begin accepting returns. Those returns will be quarantined for 3 days before being taken back out and put back into the collection. So we have a process set up for quarantining all those materials. And then the further phases of it are not scheduled at this point. The earliest we could do anything would be July 1st, and that would be minimal opening in order to allow people into the library. But I can go into massive amount of detail. The staff have done a great job putting a plan together. It includes the initial phases we will have no contact with the public. The carryout service, which I'm sure some of you have used carryout service at the grocery store and or at a restaurant or something like that. In most cases, a staff member who's masked and gloved comes out to your car and places it in the trunk or something like that. That is not what we're going to be doing. We'll create a staging area. The staff will be the public will have to schedule a time when they can come and pick it up. They'll have a 30-minute window for that time to pick it up, and the staff will have bagged the materials with their name on it, I believe already checked out to them, and that will be positioned in the conoid. The public merely comes in and picks up their materials. We try to identify if it's the same person or not, but staff will be behind a protective barrier and not actually interacting with the public in the first phase.
Do you have items that do not circulate, like periodicals that people usually have to read in the library? Those are unavailable, correct?
Current issues of magazines and the reference materials, yeah.
My mom will not be happy. But
We'll make an exception.
David will, how many people will you have to add to the staff, in addition to the people you have now, to accommodate these new things that are going to happen in May and June?
So we'll be able to manage phase 1 and phase 2 of the projects with our current staffing levels.
Okay.
We will be deploying them in teams. So there will not be more than 3 or 4 people in the building at a time. They'll be working in grouped teams. Those teams will not intersect because there's a concern that if any one member of the team, any team got sick, we would have to close again. We're hoping that we would be able to just be able to put that team under quarantine. And if it's 3 or 4 people, then we would backfill them with current staffing levels. We'd sanitize the library and then go back to providing the same service, hopefully within days.
Thank you.
Jane was asking if, and Jennifer answered that Maine resumes first. I assume then Meadows, then Reynolds and North.
We have the capacity to do curbside at Meadows. Obviously, is better than Reynolds. Reynolds is better than Nobo. Nobo, we don't believe is a safe destination for curbside pickup. There's no parking. It's a busy intersection where the library sits, and so we are not recommending that we could open up Nobo for curbside pickup.
And the Carnegie Archive will open in that the staff will be in the facility in June to begin to provide telephone reference and online services. They won't be open to public visits probably until phase 4, July or later.
So you've given us some previews of what phase 4 would look like. We're going to have maybe half the furniture, do we have limited in and out, or?
Phase 4 we're referring to as the new normal. We don't know entirely what phase 4 is going to look like. We anticipate that we will probably have to run closed stacks for quite some time. We will likely not be able to permit gathering of more than 50 people in a space at one time. So those are a lot of the things that we anticipate that would be going forward indefinitely until such time as a vaccine and or adequate treatment is available. And so we would have the ability for people to come into the library, perhaps use computers, pick up their own holds, maybe go to a barrier and request, like, I want 10 dinosaur books and a book on fire trucks and how to raise a dog. And then staff would run and get that. We would bag it for them, pass it through a safe barrier, and then the public would be able to take it. But the idea of having closed stacks and the inability for us to control the social distancing within those stacks is probably not going to be approved in the new normal until there's a vaccine. And meeting rooms like the Canyon Theater, we don't anticipate opening up those anytime soon either. Storytime presents issues. Not to say that we can't do Storytime out in the park, and not to say that we can't do most of the programs that have been in the Canyon Theater also out in the park. I mean, you know, we could do movies in the parking lot with a big drive-in screen. We could do concerts in the band shell. We could do a lot of things like that. And those are all in the plan, but they're all things we can do. Whether or not we do them will come down to health guidelines and the resources that we have.
Earlier you had mentioned or had one of these conversations that maybe the holds might go away.
No, I fully anticipate that holds are going to go up. So, you know, holds right now constitute about, I don't know, 15 to 20% of our business. It could go up significantly higher than that. I think what you remember me referring to, Juana, is that the cost of us producing a hold, and it's a great service, and we're never going to get rid of it, but the cost of us providing that service is nearly twice the amount of people actually coming in and picking up their own book for themselves and then doing it through self-check. Whenever we do a hold, that means a staff member has to go and get it. They have to put it on a shelf. We have to track it through the computer. There's all the added cost associated with that.
Yeah.
We may consider lowering the allowance of holds for temporarily till we can understand what kind of demand there will be, and if we can keep up with the demand. Other libraries in the consortium have decided to lower their holds limit allowances temporarily. I think we're going along with that, David. Is that correct?
Yeah, at this point, we will be going along with the holds recommendations. And it's somewhere right now between Loveland's already open, you know, and so I think they've realized that they have to control the number of holds that people put on. Otherwise, everybody wants everything, and that's not a feasible solution.
So in terms of library services, the Flatirons Consortium loans, Prospector, interlibrary loans, are we expecting those to continue at this point?
Yes, pretty much. I mean, one of the FLC consortium is also, Flatirons Library Consortium is also looking at potential cuts. And so, you know, you should know I'm opposed to it, but I'm one out of 6 voting members. They are talking about the possibility of eliminating Prospector. So Prospector is an extraordinarily expensive service that we provide. You know, the individual cost to Boulder Public Library is only about $16,000, but that's for roughly 2,000 books that we get through Prospector. It's not a cost-effective service. It's a great service in the sense in which it allows the staff to say, you can have whatever you want. And that's in some ways priceless, but I get it. We're all having to make budget cuts. And so the other FLC members brought up at the last meeting, they did not vote on it, but the talk was that we might want to consider dropping Prospector.
Oh, okay.
Just for some backstory, Prospector does, I believe, unfairly charge the FLC. We are essentially one ILS, we're one system, but they treat us as if we are 6. So we all have to pay the price that we would pay if we were individual libraries, when in fact the way our computer system works and the way our ILS system works, we're only one library to them. We're one burden. And, you know, in whole, Prospector, primarily because of Longmont, we are a net lender to Prospector rather than a net borrower. And so it feels
really?
It feels as if they're punishing us. And I'll tell you one more tidbit because of the way in which
It's like Kentucky. Sorry.
yeah, so one other tidbit, the way in which the FLC divides cost is based upon the volume and size of the library, so circulation, the number of computers you have, and that kind of thing. And so we are currently paying more. Boulder Public Library is currently paying more for Prospector than Arapahoe Library District. Arapahoe Library District is nearly 3 or 4 times the size of the FLC combined, and we are paying more than they are for Prospector service, and that grates me just the wrong way. So I get the value of it. It's not a terrible expense, but it's also, we're not being treated fairly in my estimation.
Right, right. And who are they?
It's an independent nonprofit consortium that's been around for forever. It's had 2 or 3 different names. It's a statewide lending service. I mean, it's a good organization. We go to their board meetings. We protested the pricing thing 3 years ago. They kind of laughed us out of the room. And I don't believe they have any intention to change our pricing, but they might if we decided to pull back.
So Jane has had a few, thank you, David, a couple of questions about access. With Noble closed, with Maine being the only open library. She's wondering about how we service the rest of the city.
So, Jane, we are planning on continuing with our outreach service. So within the context of the furlough, we'll get to whatever questions you have later. We have maintained the outreach staff. It's really one staff member, but we've also some of the people who have been retained, people who are retained who had language skills, who could in particular could help with outreach to the Latinx community and or also the senior community. So one of the things that we're looking at, and it's not decided yet, but we are looking at expanding the Homebound delivery program. So the way we do the Homebound delivery program now, it's almost entirely run by volunteers. Again, it's a costly service. So if you think holds are expensive, Homebound delivery is even more expensive. But I'm hoping that with the outreach team and with Celine Cooper, who some of you know, she's working some of those partners that we currently have. If we could arrange for facility deliveries, so imagine we're delivering to a Boulder housing partner site, or to a mobile home park community center, or to a senior living facility, that would significantly lessen the cost of us providing homebound delivery. What we would be relying on, we do targeted marketing to those communities, ask them if they were interested in having books at that site, and then we could feasibly deliver books to those facilities and then rely on a person within those facilities or one of our partners to distribute those books within the community. Now there's obviously a lot of challenges. It's not cheap, but if we did facility delivery rather than individual households, it would certainly be easier for us. I understand that, the orders for people who are at risk, either over 60 years of age or over, or people who have a previous health condition, are not being advised to go out in any way. And so, I realize that's going to be a big need. We'd like to be able to provide something there. It's just when we did our cost estimates, it's probably around $6 a delivery, and that adds up pretty quick if you factor in the number of people who live in Boulder who are over 60 years of age and or possibly have a pre-existing health condition. I know the age of our community, the percentage of our population which is over 60 is quite high. I mean, the percentage of the population that's under 22 was also quite high, but I think they all went home to California and wherever else. Yeah. And you know, Jane, if we're given permission to, you know, we're doing the hotspot pickups in North Boulder exclusively. So the hotspot program that we're running, we have been doing that up in North Boulder, and it's as simple as setting up a stand and distributing things. And we might look at ways to do that in the mobile home parks and around Boulder housing partner sites as well. In much the way that you describe it, it's kind of like a pop-up shop with, you know, kids picking up books at a table.
Yeah. Any other questions for Jennifer or David? Scott? If you're asking, you're muted. Did you have a question, Scott?
He's typing
you're
it.
Typing, sorry.
Celia, I have a question on protocol. Are we required to read all of the questions into the record, or will we capture that in the minutes somehow?
I've been grabbing them and putting them in the minutes. I don't know if
Okay.
there's a proper protocol about it.
Okay, because we missed, I think, one of Jane's questions. I answered it in the text, but
Yeah, I got that in the
Okay.
minutes.
Yeah, I think those are both great ideas, Scott. The limit on holds, right now we're looking at the number 5, and that's probably the number that we'll go out with once we open up to new holds, is 5 items per person at a time. And the bookmobile type of service, yeah, that is kind of what we're talking about when we're talking about a book delivery system that would go to residential facilities and or mobile home parks. We have the ability right now to check out materials to people remotely, but again, that may require a level of contact that we're not permitted to put the staff and or public into. So it's more likely that we would be relying upon someone in that community or household to do that distribution for us. But the other option, and we've done this already throughout the crisis, we have ordered books to have them just delivered directly to a site. Now that took a lot of finagling with our vendors, because our vendors don't like the idea that we're just buying books and giving them away, but that's what we do. That's our job, right? So we are looking at the prospect of actually buying stuff, age-appropriate materials, like here's a bag full of 5 good books for a 4th grader, and then we would just put those out, and people could take them and then bring them back when they're finished.
Will you have a bag for 60-year-olds?
Well, I mean, I think we would do something like a bag of mysteries, a bag of cookbooks, a bag of espionage thrillers, a bag of westerns. I don't know what you want, Luana.
I want more time to read, is what I want. All right. So we had Alicia had a question or a comment about hotspots. How many staff can you add back on July first, and what have current staff been working on remote services or planning for opening again or other?
We don't have a set number yet, Juana. And is that a question from Alicia? I don't know. So we don't have a set number of what staff will be back in place on July 1. We don't know that we'll be reopening in any different capacity in July 1. That's what the city is now saying is a best case scenario for phase 3. So best case scenario phase 3, we would potentially be bringing back some people who are on furlough if we were actually going into that on phase 3. I don't know what the date would be on that. I think it's conjecture to guess. So, but yeah, that will be more determined by the financial state that the city believes it's in at that time than it will be determined by COVID. So, we've been asked we furloughed, and I think, Alicia, and I'm sure you all are wonder, so, and it's not a secret, it was printed in the paper. The city didn't release the data, but the data is out there. So we furloughed 70%. And I think I saw one place where they said 75%. That's not true. It's actually 70% of all staff were furloughed, library staff. The remaining staff, the primary decision-making criterion for the furlough was what staff can be actively and fully engaged while the libraries are closed. And so the staff that were maintained were the ones who were already working on the wireless hotspot programs, rolling out virtual programs, those people who are working on the reopening plan, those people who are working on the future financial situation of the library, and those people who are working on the Summer of Discovery, which we had decided early on was probably going to be a virtual program. That's who most of the people were who are maintained, and what they've been working on in the intervening months have been precisely those things. So we're about ready to launch or ready to contractually and laying out all the logistics for launching summer reading, Summer of Discovery, using staff members, and hopefully we'll be able to recruit some volunteers for that as well, for doing a fully virtual Summer of Discovery. The virtual programs have been going up with regularity, and those are going to be expanding in the coming months because we expect those programs will continue, like story time and other things like that. And I think, the budget reductions, and I'm not sure, I don't really know, right? So the city is not naming a number. They're not saying we're reducing everybody by, 50% or 20% or anything like that. What they're asking for us to do is to explain the impact of every single service that we provide that's not an essential service, and put forward what the potential reductions would be and what the impact to the community would be if these were accepted, and then what ways we've thought of to mitigate that impact. And so we're prepared to do so. We've been working on those documents the past 3 weeks. So we will be submitting those to the city this week to the executive budget team. And then they're going to review every single service that's provided by the city and provided by the library and examine them to see whether or not those are cuts that they believe the city needs to make in order to make it through this financially. The financial lens is the one that at this point probably is trumping the coronavirus lens because of the desperate situation that the city finds itself in because of the economic crisis. I hope that answers the question. I know it's probably not the answer. It's not concrete, and I don't know what's concrete. Jane Brodigan, the city manager, has promised that she's going to make some form of announcement by June 1st. And so my understanding is when we turn our documents in later this week, those are going to go to the executive budget team. The executive budget team will review those, and then they will recommend reductions to council. Although in this environment, council doesn't have control over the reductions, they certainly would be consulted on it, but that resides primarily with the city manager. I think there will be a community conversation. I no doubt there will be, because if the city is looking at, in their case, what they said was a best case scenario 2 weeks ago of roughly 20% reductions, and then in the last discussion they had of it, they said it could be twice that. So it could be, 33, 34% reductions in revenue for the remainder of the year. And that's all speculation. They don't know. But those cuts would be profound. I mean, 17% alone for the library is over $1 million. 34% is probably closer to $3 million. And there's no way that we can reduce our budget by 33% without it having a severe impact on the services we provide and the staff that we are able to maintain.
David, Jane has a question in the text.
We can furlough staff longer. So currently, staff are furloughed to June 28th. We can both extend the furlough, end the furlough, lay those people off, and or we can call them back. Although we've been given no indication that there are going to be any callbacks from furlough anytime soon. I had been previously asked, is there a length of time for how long a furlough can go? I don't believe there is. That's really a question for HR and lawyers, and I have asked that question, but so far it doesn't appear that there's a length of time for a furlough.
Any other questions for David or Jennifer regarding our phasing, reopening? Thank you very much for that, for your written summary and for answering all of our questions and letting us know how much uncertainty there is in all of this. All right, so
There's one more question.
Yeah.
The communication will come directly from initially Jane, and then I should imagine followed by a press release from the city of Boulder. And I anticipate, Jane, that that's all going to happen right around June 1st and in the week or so following.
All right, thank you. Next, we have items from commission. Our retreat on March 14th was interrupted just hours before it happened.
Sure was.
And that Tuesday we were going to go in front of council where they were going to have a public hearing on the district and so forth, and that all came to a crashing halt. And soon after that, a couple of us talked to Aaron Brockett, city councilman, asking him when he thought would be appropriate for us to bring up the district question again. And his answer at the time was like, not in the foreseeable future. And Aaron has been very much, on the side of districting for the library. But at that point, so soon after all the closures, et cetera, he didn't think it was appropriate to bring it up at all. And we haven't. And, that time for talking about district, we don't know when that could be. In the meantime, several of us have also emailed council members to remind them or keep it in their minds that the library is an important part of our recovery as a city and as a community. And I got, I usually get a response at least from Bob Yates. He responds to every email. Like, he did not respond to that one, but Rachel Friend responded. And Junie, and they, they said thank you for keeping this in the discussion. So, of course, they have a lot of uncertainty about when to bring all this up again. I don't know if other commissioners have had exchanges with council members since forever ago on February 5th when we last met. We were going really heavy on them in February, right? And the first 2 weeks in March, nagging them day and night about library funding and making ourselves available to answer questions everywhere we saw them, but we haven't seen anybody. So anyone else have anything to add to that? Thank you, Stephen, for offering to make masks for people. Well, do you want to talk about that, Stephen? You are the fiber arts guru over at Building 61.
Emily, who is the newest member of Building 61 staff, has been making excellent videos for Building 61. She made a DIY Building 61 make your own mask video, which has an exceeding amount of views on the internet for a video made by our library staff. I think it's got to be over 1,000. It's got to be maybe closer to 2,000. It was an early video. She made it very quick before other people jumped on that bandwagon, and her design is great, and a lot of people adapted it. In the first week of COVID, I hosted a Zoom workshop with people via Building 61 unofficially, and we made masks with Janet Hollingsworth, who is a former library staff member who was in DC.
Yeah.
And her and the students that she works with out of her makerspace, and then some former Boulder residents who are living in South America actually jumped on that call as well and were part of the mask making workshop. So I know David probably has more details on other stuff that's happening inside of Building 61, but for the most part, they've been doing incredible digital outreach, and the quality of the digital outreach that they're doing is very professional, very nice and easy to watch and adorable. Emily also made a video for Building 61 about making homemade ghee, which is the most Bouldery thing you could possibly do.
Yeah.
It starts with buying, I think putting 6-7 sticks of butter into a pot. So if you want to hoard butter, it's a great video for you. Although it was a very calming video that actually made me feel good, even though there's no way in heck that I'm making ghee. There's a lot of steps, but they're doing great work over there.
Thank you, Stephen. Also, a group of, seemed like an anonymous group, went around to all the libraries putting up yellow ribbons on the nearby trees, putting up notes of thank you for all the work you've done, and we miss you for the librarians. I think what I heard is that this group was only limited by the amount of yellow ribbon available in places that were still open 2 weeks ago. So if anybody has extra yellow ribbon laying around, go and put it up. And
Unfortunately, I only have pink ribbon, Juana.
and you have all the like the sequins, right? Yards and yards of sequins. We could do that instead of yellow ribbons. Right. The other thing is the American Library Association has a series of ongoing webinars if anybody's interested in watching about how to engage library supporters during COVID. Some of them are very useful. So Jane and Joel, how is Halo going?
David, maybe you can report. We've committed, just to refresh everybody's memory, we've committed $10,000 towards Halo, and then a matching up to $25,000. I don't know how much has been dispersed, David.
I have an update.
Okay.
So I got an update from Alicia just before the meeting. Does everybody know the Halo program is help a librarian out? Halo, sorry, that took me a second. So it's been launched locally to help out people that have been furloughed from the library. And so far they have had 5 people asking for funding, and they are anticipating more. Each recipient has received $500, though $4,300 had been requested. Depending on how many more requests they get, they're going to circle back to those people to allow them to request more. The $500 amount ensures that they can give every staff member furloughed that amount and have enough for everyone. And so far they've raised $9,830 plus the initial $10,000 that the foundation had pledged. And then there's a clarification on that dollar amount. So she said, also with the match plus the donation and our $10,000, that means that we've raised a total of $29,660. So I think that is $9,830 that was raised aside from what the foundation put, because the foundation had 2 different pledges. They were going to put an initial amount in and then match a dollar amount up to, I think it was $35,000. So that's the update I have.
Outstanding, thank you. All right, any other venues where you have represented the commission or the library that you want to update us on? The other items we have are the emails and phone calls to Library Commission. We've had a few emails. We had an exchange with Alicia, and that's how I'm glad you were able to join us today. And we've had several letters from 5th graders at Crestview Elementary. Stephen was so moved by one of them that he immediately wrote JJ back. Thank you, Stephen, for doing that. We had several others, and Joel has offered. Joel, are you finished with, what were you volunteering with just last?
Well, I'm going to respond to the other couple of emails we got from Crestview.
Sorry, we heard very little of that, but Joel was busy with National History Day. So he said he might take on responding to some of these. Okay, I'm not minimizing them by calling them adorable, but they are adorable. They're very well written, you know, with a lot of emotion and intention, and adorable letters from the 5th graders. Yes, and Stephen and David and I sat in on their presentations of projects on the North Boulder Library today, and they did a lot of great work. Did you want to say something about that, Stephen? Or David?
I would just comment for everybody else that it was, and I don't know, Jane, have you had a chance to sit in on any of them yet? Or I'm sure you have so much going on at home anyway, but I don't know if any of you guys have had a chance to sit in, but they were lovely. And it was just a really good moment, and it felt great to see the students just love the library and the potential. And I think that some of the messages that our staff and our public communications officers have put out about the benefits of a library and the benefits being beyond literacy and different forms of literacy, expanding what that means for these students. I think they really they really understood those really important things, that a library builds community. They understood its importance as a place that was intergenerational. It was just so lovely to hear these things that I always think about in my head that you don't necessarily think that people growing up are understanding about the importance of libraries. And I think these students have drank the Kool-Aid, and it was nice because, you know, they all had library Kool-Aid mustaches on, all of them.
Yes, they did. It was great. Oh, Jane, you're muted.
I'm sorry. Can I make a comment? I sat in on the Growing Up Boulder presentation with the 3rd graders, and I would like to also echo what Stephen had to say. It was really inspiring to hear the thoughts and ideas they had. They have a very big request for a zip line and hammocks, which I heavily support. I think both of those would be amazing additions to North Boulder Library. And it was also it was really eye-opening for me to be on the other side of a Zoom call with 3rd graders, as I have my own 3rd grader that I'm having a hard time pinning down for Zoom calls. And so it made me feel better because there was a lot of moving around. And so I have a 3rd grader who can't sit still. So it was good to see that that's across Boulder.
Juana, now you're muted.
Hats off to all the parents out there who all of a sudden, David and Jane, homeschooling. Amazing work. All right. So now we come to the director's report. And David sent out reports on occupancy rates for meeting rooms, for study rooms, and the quarterly performance.
I'm happy to answer any questions you guys have on the director's report.
I think a few months ago, maybe 6 months ago, we were talking about why do you think some of the numbers are a little bit lower for attendance. I think that was the main one. The in-person visits.
Yeah, I think they were off by 1%. And no, I don't have an explanation for that one.
Oh.
Program attendance was down a little bit this year, and I don't have a great explanation for that either. I think we were both offering slightly fewer programs, and the numbers have declined slightly, but not in some precipitous way where I thought there was a canary in the coal mine.
Yeah.
When we come back, our numbers are going to be dramatically different. We're hoping to see an uptick in, digital downloads and, social media contacts and things like that. And if we don't see that uptick, we'll have to seriously reevaluate some of the things we've been doing, because we've been pouring a lot of resources into digital materials for the past 2 months in order to address what we assumed would be an increased need there. A lot of that comes back around to, and I'm so glad we got the hotspot program off the ground, because, you don't want to be, well, we all know there's a digital divide. You don't want to become a part of it, right? You don't want to start, we are currently pumping a ton of resources into virtual and digital resources, but we have to also realize that that is not the only platform, and certainly it's not the major platform for a lot of seniors in our community and a lot of underserved people in our community who don't otherwise have access to good internet connections, ability to pay for a data plan. And so, this is hopefully a short-term fix that we're looking at. We pumped a lot of money into that program. If we have to make significant cuts, it may impact our ability to, buy enough physical materials to address the needs in some underserved communities, whether it be senior living facilities or people who can't afford internet. I don't want that to happen.
Right. On the other hand, circulation of physical and e-collections were up a lot in 2019. So, maybe fewer people hanging out at the library, but more people getting books.
Part of that number,
patrons, lots of new patrons. Sorry.
Yeah, and part of that number for the increase in circulation numbers is inflated by the fact that we went to auto renewal. So, auto renewal, you don't have to bring your book back. You don't even have to remember. We just renew it for you, and you get it for another 3 weeks. And so that had an impact on those numbers too. And so I don't want you to assume that the numbers grew significantly. They did grow some, but it's difficult to. We had some base data, but it's difficult to parse it out entirely to say that increase, the auto renewal accounted for whatever 10%. That's not possible to say.
Anyone else have questions or comments for David?
I have one. I'm just looking forward to Summer of Discovery and the programs that you might have and resources you have for, in particular, BVSD kids. I'm getting a lot of questions from my friends and from the teachers at the school about how they're going to be communicated or announced. And I guess the background is there's a lot of people thinking as we go beyond May 21st, which is the end of the school year, there's a lot of people that still are going to continue homeschooling to make up for the gap in the disruption. And also, I think, to fill the hours, because there's a lot of the camps have been cancelled. And so there's a lot of parents who are facing just continuing to have kids at home. And when the teachers stop doing their lessons, they're scrambling to find what's going to fill the hours to keep them entertained while they're working. So I just wondered if there is like a plan to communicate with the schools, or kind of when things will be announced so that people can start using those resources?
Yeah, so it's all based on contracts. So I think our launch date for Summer of Discovery this year will be a little bit late. It's going to be, I think, in the second or third week of June, but I'd have to check with some people, Jane, to have a specific date. But it is going to be a robust program. So we are going to we will print some printed reading logs for people who are not online, and those will be available for pickup, I believe, at the carryout stations that we establish. We'll probably also distribute some of those in the community, along with hopefully a bag of books here's an appropriate bag of books for a kid who's in 4th grade or something like that. So that's the intent. We are going to be doing robust programming. It's all going to be virtual, but there will be, I think, I haven't seen the full list of programs that we're planning to run through it, but the team that's assembling the Summer of Discovery program is building a pretty robust Summer of Discovery program. Because we kind of, when we set out to do this a couple of months ago and work with a new vendor, we were saying we're going to have to deal with a 6-month slide, not a 3-month slide. We're going to be dealing with a 6-month slide. So let's plan accordingly. And so we're doing quite a lot there. There will be some minor reductions in the amount of Summer of Discovery too, perhaps, because we won't be doing large events outside, which have been very popular with families in the past. And we also had to, because of the anticipated loss of our marketing budget and the cuts from the city, we are asking the Summer of Discovery budget from the foundation to cover their own marketing. So they will, and we have some resources to put towards that, but they're going to be covering most of all of their own marketing as well. So I haven't seen a full marketing plan yet for it, but I think it'll be a good one. Certainly we'll have the reading logs there at carryout. We'll deliver some in the communities, underserved communities. We do have some good contacts with the school. I won't say with the school district, but certainly with some of the schools. I'd say about 10 or 11 of the schools, all of the Title I schools, and then several others who have participated massively in Summer of Discovery in the past. And the plan is we are going to do prizes. The plan at this point is either we'll figure out a way to coordinate their pickup or we will figure out a way to send them to the children and families who complete the summer reading program. And a lot of them are the same ones, right? So a lot of them are the ones, you get a book, you get an ice cream, you get a Gateway pass and those kind of things. But Gateway, as you can imagine, has also been hit quite hard with this. And so Gateway has also requested of us to print our own coupons. They're going to give us the things. So that's another cost added on to the Summer of Discovery program that we'll have to come up with the money to do the printing of those coupons.
Alien cups?
No, never again.
I just sneakily threw those away. Thank you, David. Also, I know you guys are you're very understaffed. If you want to reach out with an email, I have a lot of friends at a lot of different schools that I'm really happy to circulate a link and when it might be coming out. If you need any help circulating the information within the schools, and I can help, let me know.
I'll definitely do that, Jane.
Can I make a comment about the schools?
Yeah.
Well, here's my deal. I was one time in a different life. I was a school teacher, and when I was in Lafayette, we worked a lot tried to work a lot with the schools. And there's a lot of research and a lot of discussion going around the country about they talk about the traditional summer whack-a-bear slide that the kids have because they're not in school. And now that they've been out for an extra 2 to 3 months, there's even more concern that the kids who don't necessarily have access to books or their families, that they're going to fall even farther behind. And I don't have an answer to this. It's just more a thought piece, is that the libraries traditionally have filled a really key support role during the summertime for those kids, for the children in those categories. And given, you know, staffing cuts and budget cuts and all that, the library can't be expected to fill that void, but it would make sense in some ways for the library to talk with the school district and say, you're facing this problem, we have this problem, is there a way we can partner to address some of those literacy or school lack of school time deficits that the kids are facing at this current time? Because, you know, I laugh because I talk to some of my school teacher friends and I say, I bet some of your parents now appreciate you a little more because they now know what you do every day with all those 30 kids, and especially the, you know, 3 or 4 or 5 that are just, you know, just, I won't say uncontrollable, but those are ones that are a little more challenging in their classroom behaviors. So I just, you know, put that out as a thought piece to say, going forward, how might we partner with the schools to leverage, you know, the schools are going to be in the same boat. They're going to have they aren't going to have any money either. And it's like, how can we to leverage what little we have on both sides to maximize learning for kids, literacy kids, and minimize some of those that lost school time and that lost, you know, summertime, that reading. That's just more of a thought piece for us. And I don't have an answer. David, do you have any thoughts?
We have great partnerships with a number of the schools. And again, it's Title I schools, and primarily it's either an individual principal, like at Crestview, or a teacher librarian at an individual school who forms a great partnership. So we're invited oftentimes to PTO days. We're actually invited frequently to do the teacher events to help them, to share with them the kind of curriculum that we're looking at and what they're looking at. The reality is, and you know, Rob Anderson is new, and we have had some conversations, but the objectives, oftentimes the objectives of the school district and our objectives slightly diverge. You know, we're primarily interested in the ages of 0 to 8. I mean, that's where we spend a lot of our time focusing on reading for kids. We do have teen programs, we do have young adult programs, but those are not nearly as robust as what the school system offers. And what we've found in Boulder is that a lot of the schools, a lot of the kids' lives are so heavily pre-programmed that after a certain age, say 10 or so, they have less and less time for library experiences. The other thing, which, you know, I think they will suffer some going forward, but the current situation is the school district's budget is around $500 million. Their budget for merely for transportation of kids is around $34 million, which is 4 times my annual budget in its entirety. And if I'm looking at 33% cuts, there's nothing I can do really to garner their attention. And so, you know, unless we establish clear objectives, we're more of a learn how you want to. We're an educational platform, I would say, and they have objectives around testing scores and getting kids into the next grade and that kind of thing, which are not really of any concern of mine. And so, you know, I want kids to have an equal opportunity to be able to learn. And you're absolutely right. The books in the house are probably one of the prime predictors of the success of a child and their attitudes toward learning. So that is a critical kind of function. I think our summer discovery program will be good. We typically reach about 3,000 or 4,000 kids each summer, and I anticipate that will be roughly the same, maybe slightly higher this year. I don't really know. Again, there's the hurdle. They have to go online to do it, and so that will present a hurdle, an insurmountable hurdle, for a number of the members of our community, and probably those members of our community who need the advantages the most. And that's one of the things that we look at every single day. It's like a lot of the families in Boulder can afford to, you know, in times of closures of libraries, access different programs, different services that other families cannot. And so really our focus and the focus of our master plan was to garner our attention towards underserved populations, and we're going to do the best that we can with those. If we're still in this a year from now, we may scrap a wholehearted, the whole approach to summer reading in its entirety and focus more on underserved communities, which I know some libraries throughout the country have begun to do. They take a more concentrated approach to children in low-income families and/or in low-income school areas and put all of their attention there. Yeah, and Alicia's calling out the Student One card. That was a program that it took us 2 years to launch and a year-long pilot, but that program has been a boon, I think, in terms of the resources that Boulder Valley School District kids can access all library databases and online resources just by using their student ID. And I know that program is being copied all around the state. I know, I think Lafayette and Louisville were just in the process of finalizing that contract as this crisis happened. And I think Broomfield may have been right behind us as well. So.
Any other? David, did you have?
No, I was going to say if there's no other questions, that concludes my report.
Hearing no other questions, I entertain a motion to. Do I have to move, or do we need a motion to close the meeting? I can't remember.
No motion needed for that. We can just adjourn.
So we adjourn the meeting for tonight. Thank you for attending. Oh, one question from Jane. You're muted.
Sorry. The next meeting will be as scheduled the first Wednesday in June. Is that correct?
That is correct. It'll probably be virtual again, Jane.
And we'll take July off as we have every year. All right. Well, thank you to everybody and have a good evening. Rest of your evening.
Thank you, Commission. Welcome aboard, Scott.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
And Mr. Vice. Can we call you Vice for short?
I guess
Sure, absolutely.
I have a postscript question. Seeing